Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. A packed Wednesday because this is like our Thursday show because we're not doing a show on Thanksgiving because that would be strange, right?
Yeah, I like you. I don't want to do a live show on Thanksgiving.
And your wife does not want you to do a live show on Thanksgiving with me.
Which is probably more important. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the show. So usually the Thursday show is all the picks and previews. We've been sprinkling them out this week. We did some on Monday. We did the games that are going to be played on Friday. On the Tuesday show, yesterday, we did the other ACC and Big 12 games. And today we're doing all the Big 10 games. That means we are doing a big game breakdown on Ohio State, Michigan. That means we are also doing picks and previews for Washington, Oregon, Maryland, Penn State, Indiana-Purdue, Notre Dame-USC, Illinois-Northwestern, and Rutgers-Michigan State. We have actually 3 Cram games to do, and we are going to do what you watching, what you eating, what you thinking, and I made my Thanksgiving side, Bill, so people can, again, on this show, do what they love to do, which is watch me eat.
It's the most exciting 10 minutes in podcasting when you start shoveling food into your mouth.
I've told this story before in a podcast. One time when I had a job in the summer, I got word that one of the girls that I worked with might be interested in getting a little bit of Dougie Fresh. And so it was like, we'll eat lunch together in the employee cafeteria. And so we did. And then after lunch, I was told that I was such a disgusting eater that she was out. So I have scared women away with my eating before. So get ready for that. I have a spoon. Let's preview games. We'll do the big game breakdown second. We'll do these other Northern games first. Last week, you beat me, Landis. 15-3 for you last week. Look at you. Surging at the end. 15-3. I was 14-4. Overall for the season, I maintain an 8-game lead. I am 205-57. You are 197-65. So the 3 different shows this week, we're going to add all the picks together, obviously. But these are the Big 10 games. And this is a big one. And if you want to make arguments about devaluing the regular season, I think maybe this first game would be part of your argument. I think it's worth it for what we're getting out of the 12-team playoff. But Oregon-Washington maybe isn't what it would have been in other seasons, Bill, because this Oregon team has clinched a spot in the Big 10 title game already. If they win the Big 10 title game, they're going to be the 1 or 2 seed, regardless of whether they beat Washington or not. And I think even if they lose the Big 10 title game, if you would throw in a loss to Washington, all that would do maybe is knock them from the 5 to the 6 seed, but I'm not so sure they wouldn't be the 5 seed anyway. They are the only undefeated team remaining in FBS football out of 134 teams. But Oregon really wants to beat Washington because Washington has won the last 3, including twice last year. So, like, big picture, maybe this game is devalued. Small picture, hey, we don't like you. You don't like us. We're near each other. We're in the same conference. We joined the Big 10 together. You've ruined our season before. We now want to get revenge. I still think there's a lot here, Landis. It's not like Oregon doesn't care about this game.
No, I think Oregon cares about this game. I think Dan Lanning cares about getting a win against Washington, right?
Yes.
That's a thing that people say about him as he's rising up the coaching ranks, is that he's not won this game. So I think that matters to him. I think it matters to Oregon, right? As it's on a quest for a national championship to try to do it undefeated. Like you're chasing excellence, right? And I know there's a balance between, wanting to be smart about resting players and making sure you're at your best when you get into the postseason, which Oregon has already clinched. But I also think chasing the unblemished record is worthwhile for the Ducks, and Washington would love to spoil that for them, even if it doesn't do much to derail their playoff path.
So yeah, this is huge spoiler mode. Washington has already clinched a bowl spot with the win over UCLA last week, 6-5. This is one of these things, like, they are just a different team on the road than they are at home. And this one is at Oregon. So you're not going to get the best of Washington because they have to be at home to get the best of Washington. This is the 117th time these teams are playing. 68-43-5. Washington leads the series. Jed Fish, first-year Washington coach, has been around this a little bit, was asked about, hating your rival. Former assistant at Michigan, among his other stops.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say you catch glimpses of it. This is about like sort of the vibe of a rivalry. It's not hard to know. I've told our team that. It's by region. There's hatred in Auburn, Alabama. There's excessive hatred in Michigan, Ohio State, and the Midwest. And there's certainly excessive hatred in the Pacific Northwest between Washington and Oregon. That's the beauty of college football. That's the beauty of these games. And that's what you're looking for. I do think, Landis, in a 12-team playoff situation where you could, just like in the NFL, right, where you could get to the last week of the regular season, quote, not mattering for the playoff picture and that kind of thing, or not mattering for making a bowl, rivalry weekend becomes even more important because that always matters. So Washington, Oregon always matters. So I think it's not that the new context of the sport diminishes rivalry week. I think it's that rivalry week props up and helps the new context of the sport. You know what I mean? Because like otherwise, if this was Washington versus Maryland and Oregon versus Minnesota, then maybe like, what if it was Oregon, Minnesota, and Oregon rested Dylan Gabriel in the second half? You know what I mean? That's the kind of thing that I don't think would be impossible in a clinched scenario in a non-rivalry game. So rivalry games are saving us.
Yeah, I don't think it's impossible either. We may even see it. I don't think we'd see it like in this game. I don't think we'd see it in Ohio State, Michigan, certainly. But I think I mentioned the other day, we were talking about the Georgia Tech game. There was some thought about like Georgia wanting to find some place to rest their players before the playoff. And like maybe it would like try to rest people in the second half of that game if it were able to. Like but I do think generally you're right that I think if you had a just whatever, any run-of-the-mill conference game that ends your season and you were in a clinch scenario like Oregon is, I think you very much would be looking for opportunities to rest your players. But I don't think it'll happen here.
Most interesting part of this game, I think, is who's the quarterback for Washington. Mm-hmm. And Jedd Fisch has said he knows what he's going to do. He's just not going to say what he's going to do because both these teams are coming off a bye last week. It's kind of a weird schedule the way this worked out, but they're both fresh. Damon Williams, the freshman who followed Jedd Fisch from Arizona, came in and finished the UCLA game and sort of like helped them get over the top in that win. Will Rogers has started like 61 games or something. Jed 51. He started 51 games in his career. Super veteran from Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. And like credit to him, he committed with Kalen DeBoer and then stuck around with Jedd Fisch. So this is one of these, again, people just have to get accustomed to these one-year quarterback transfers. And there's, there are ding-dongs having discussions about like, this guy's not a real guy, this team. Will Rogers has been a godsend for Washington this year, right? It's great for Will Rogers. It's great for Washington fans. Damon Williams is the future. He's also been the wrinkle. And he also saved him last time. I think more Damon Williams in this game makes it super interesting. Because Dan Lanning said Oregon is preparing for both. I'm sure both will play. I would guess Damon Williams will play more than like the 15, 20 wrinkle snaps he's played in many games. I think he'll get drives. I'm super curious if they kind of just say, you're the guy. On senior day, I don't know that means that like Will Rogers wouldn't start or they ignore Will Rogers. But that's what could make it really interesting for Oregon because that dude's like a young guy, but he, like a lot of these young guys, like an Avery Johnson guy or whatever, you got legs, you're a playmaker.
Yeah, I would. My guess is that Will Rogers starts because it is senior day, because he has done a lot for this program in his 1 year there. And Jedd Fisch just kind of strikes me as the kind of guy who would want to, pay respect to that. But I think after that, I don't know, if Will Rogers starts and goes like 7 for 7 on the opening drive and they score a touchdown, I guess maybe you don't take him out. But my anticipation is that he starts, but we see more of Damon Williams in this game. Williams gives them the QB run game. He's their second leading rusher behind Jonah Coleman. When they put him out there, they've gotten to more of that kind of 11-man run game stuff. I think that's a wrinkle you can throw at Oregon that can maybe mix things up a little bit, especially we don't know if Jordan Burch is going to play for Oregon, right? So I think there could be opportunities there for Washington to hang and run the ball and maybe even find a little bit of ways to be explosive aside from Jonah Coleman in the run game if you play Damon Williams more.
Oregon is favored by 19 in this one. You and I both have it closer. There are three reasons I think this will be closer than the spread. One is the quarterback situation, I think it just could make it a little more difficult for Oregon to prepare. 2 is it's a rivalry game, and 3 is the Oregon injuries, because Dan Lanning, they still have their 3 guys. Dan Lanning has not really said what the deal is. Jordan Birch, their great defensive end, has played, missed some games, came back, then got hurt again. He missed Ohio State, Purdue, and Illinois with a knee injury, played against Michigan, hurt his ankle against Maryland, and then missed the Wisconsin game with the ankle. So, like, we don't know what's up with him. And Dan Lanning just, like, kind of gave no information about the injuries other than we'll see. Mitch Harper got hurt against Michigan, the right guard, and has missed the last 2. And Tez Johnson, the same thing. Tez Johnson on his social media has indicated that he'll be back. He's been putting up, like, signs and emojis and things that indicate this. I think maybe we've underestimated or not talked enough about how much they miss Tez Johnson. They're just so much less explosive as a passing game without Tez Johnson. The 3 games before, well, the last 3 games, Tez Johnson was healthy. Dylan Gabriel's yards per attempt, 10, 11.2, 11.2. The last 3 games without him, like he got hurt early in Michigan, and then the 2 he's missed, 8.6, 5.4, 7.0. Like they just, and then Trayshawn Holden played really well in the game when he got hurt and had 149 receiving yards. That, like, has not been the case since then. The Maryland game, Terrence Ferguson, their really good tight end, was the guy they leaned on. 12 targets, but 6 catches for 38. That's like their go-to receiver in that game, 38 yards. Last game against Wisconsin, they went to Evan Stewart more than they have all year. 12 targets, 10 catches, 92 yards. But Evan Stewart continues his kind of crazy year. He has 4 games of at least 90 yards and 6 games of 26 yards or less. And 1 game in between. So he is the ultimate boom bust. They really miss Tez Johnson. So yeah, Tez Johnson's sort of indicating he'll be back. Is this what you would do, though? But the thing we have to keep in mind, if anybody has an idea that, like, hey, what's up with Oregon? They haven't been playing that well. This is the guy that makes their offense go, and he's at least, I'm sure, going to be back for the Big Ten championship game in the playoff. I just don't know if they'll play him this game. But that's been a huge loss for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation with him, right? Do you even for the Big Ten championship game, if you don't think he's 100%, do you play him? If the difference is going to the Rose Bowl and getting a bye, or just having somebody have to come play you in Autzen, like, I don't know, like, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I don't. So that's part of it too. Like, I don't. Maybe Tez might try to play in this game. It seems to me like maybe Jordan Birch and Marcus Harper wouldn't play in this game, so that's why I picked a closer score. I also picked it closer because you mentioned that Washington's different home and road. They're very different. They're plus 16.5 scoring margin at home, and they're minus 15 scoring margin on the road. But the road trips were all long trips. Rutgers, Iowa, Indiana, Penn State. This is a familiar Pacific Northwest shorter flight for Washington. So maybe you get less of whatever has ailed Washington on the road here. So I have 38-30. I have a game. And that's like well within a cover for the Huskies.
Yeah. I have 30-23. Last couple things on this. The Washington offensive line just has not been great all year. There are 178 offensive tackles in the Power 4 who meet the threshold of, like, minimum number of snaps played. Okay. So they've played Drew as a party at right tackle all year. They've played 3 different left tackles for various reasons. So Washington, of the 178 tackles in the Power 4, has 3 of the bottom 14. Like, this offensive line just has not been very good. And so Oregon's made up for the loss of Jordan Birch in spots. And then the other thing is our guy Denzel Boston hasn't been doing much the last couple games. Denzel Boston averaged 9 targets a game the first 9 games. The last 2 games, he has 8 total. He has 4 catches for 82 yards. The last 2 games against Penn State and UCLA, like, come on. Like, you got to get the ball to your guy. So Jed Fish talking about, like, what they did with practice last week. He was just like said, Will Rogers' experience was showing up in practice. This quote super interests me. Damon's energy and confidence showed up in practice. I think that guy's going to give him a little boost. I think this is going to be fun. I do think it's going to be fun.
I read those quotes and was like, Williams was playing. Right.
I think Jed Fish has been doing his very best to try very hard to respect Will Rogers and thank him for the contribution he's made this year, and make sure that they aren't going to completely abandon him in this last game. But they're fired up to get this young guy in. Like, this guy's the future. So Yes, I think the scenario that you laid out, Rogers starts, thank you, sir, and then let's get to the young guy for a big chunk of it, I think is what's going to happen. So you and I both have a one-score game in a 19-point spread, so that tells you what we're thinking about this game. But the best of Oregon is yet to come when Jordan Birch and Marcus Harper, and especially Tez Johnson, are back, and they will be back. We're just not sure about this week. Okay. Maryland at Penn State. This is Saturday at 3:30. Penn State favored by 25.5.
Yeah, I think this is a large spread that I think will end up being a large spread with these two teams. But there is.
Are you talking about Thanksgiving? Fast? Are you talking about Thanksgiving?
Yeah. There's some unfortunate injury news for Penn State. Right tackle Anthony Donka.
Yeah.
When James Franklin says long-term injury, he usually means out for the year. He doesn't typically put a timeline on an injury unless a guy is most likely to not come back.
Stinks.
So there's two of them. There's Anthony Donka, the right tackle, and there's Alonzo Ford, defensive tackle, who's been pretty important for them. He's like their fourth guy in their four-man defensive tackle rotation, but he's also like the biggest. He's a different body type. He's 316 pounds, just like a lot. Takes up a lot of space in the middle of that defensive line. So they're going to be without both these guys for this game, and I would imagine without them for whatever Penn State does here in the postseason. Penn State is going to go to the college football playoff, but now we'll have to play there shorthanded. So we'll get a feel for maybe how will impact them in this game. Maybe we'll see. I don't know how much fight Maryland's got left in it. Maryland is not not playing for bowl eligibility. We don't know whether or not Billy Edwards Jr. is going to play a quarterback for Maryland. He was banged up in the last game. Mike Loxley said he's practicing, he's trying to fight through it. If he can't play, then MJ Morris will start for Maryland. The one thing, because we've talked about this dynamic before, do you go, MJ Morris feels like the future, do you just go to him and start building toward next year? Billy Edwards has another year of eligibility left.
Okay.
So, and he's already beaten MJ Morris once, right? And has had, he's been up and down lately, but he's had a pretty strong year, I would say, Billy Edwards has. So that's just an interesting quarterback dynamic there for Maryland. I don't know. I don't know who's going to start. I don't have a feel for it. I honestly don't know that it matters all that much. Penn State, James Franklin was talking a lot about special teams after the Minnesota game because there was some wonky stuff in there. They had field goal or an extra point blocked. They had a punt blocked. They went for it on a fake punt that was good too. But I think Penn State was not as precise with its details in that game as James Franklin was hoping his team would be as it is trying to ascend into the postseason. So this is an opportunity, I think, for Penn State to kind of flip it back into the mode that it seemed like it was in when it hammered Purdue and it hammered Washington after the Ohio State game. So I'm kind of looking for that here, even though Penn State is shorthanded, and Penn State has hammered Maryland in the past when it's had the opportunity to. It's 8-2 against Maryland since Maryland joined the Big Ten. Maryland won in 2014 and it won in 2020. Some of Penn State's winning scores against Maryland: 66-3, 38-3, 59-0, 30-0, and 55-15 last year. They'll put it on the Terps because it's an important Maryland DMV area is a very important recruiting area for Penn State. So if they have an opportunity to remind people how much better they are than Maryland, they like to take advantage of it.
Okay. I have 38-16 Penn State, which actually is Maryland slightly covering. It's not like I would bet that though. What do you have?
I have 42-17 Penn State.
Yeah. And this is one of those, again, it's just Penn State's obviously gonna, as you said, I think if Penn State lost, I don't know, but there's a little bit of positioning with Notre Dame and Penn State here, and again, it just matters. I think if Penn State wins this game, Penn State's getting a home game.
Yes,
in the first round of the college football playoff, which would be unless Ohio State loses to Michigan, Penn State makes the Big Ten championship game as a result and beats Oregon, then they're getting a bye. But otherwise, they're getting a first round home game, which is going to be awesome. But this is a good chance to keep the fans revved up for that. I think a lot of fans are thinking about that, and Maryland's in a tough spot. Did the Maryland AD say anything mean about Mike Loxley this week? Do you know? I didn't.
Not that I saw, but no. But I did see. So Mike Loxley walked into his press conference while FaceTiming Jalen Hurts, then made a joke and said look, Jalen, look how many people are here to talk to me, and then there was nobody in the room because Maryland has 4 wins. So he was making a joke about the disinterest in Maryland football. So I don't know. I don't know how that will be received.
Well, also reminding everybody that he knows famous people.
Yeah, right.
Which is not a Not a bad deal. Okay, so we're both picking easy Penn State wins. Whether you want to give the points or take the points is up to you. Next one is Purdue at Indiana, the old Oaken Bucket. I love the old Oaken Bucket. Saturday at 7. Indiana's favored by 29.5. I like the site Odds Shark. It lists like the history of betting lines. So this went back to 1995, the last 27 games between Indiana and Purdue. This is the biggest spread. So 29.5. Look at you with the Cignetti number. We had theorized about is this the greatest difference between one of these teams being good and one of these teams being not good, like in the modern history of this rivalry? I certainly don't know enough about the history to know for sure, but we were asking our guy, Zach Osterman, the Indiana writer, about it. They've played this 125 times. Purdue leads the series 77-42-6. And it's as a reminder, it's like Curt Cignetti has just whitewashed the history of Indiana football that you would forget this. Purdue's won 3 straight and 5 of the last 6 in this rivalry. Purdue won 35-31 last year. That's their last Big Ten win. So it's been more than a year since Purdue has won a Big Ten game, because all they've won this year is their opener against Indiana State. Can I ask you about this? I'm not obsessing about this, because I still think there's going to be at least 1 or 2 upsets in the playoff picture this week. Indiana was number 10 in the college football playoff rankings on Tuesday night. Clemson was number 12 and South Carolina was number 15, and Clemson and South Carolina are playing each other this week. Yes. I'm not freaking out about it, but that was not a very big gap. And Indiana is playing arguably the worst team in the Power 4, and those other 2 teams are playing each other. Is there any chance that the winner of that game is going to hop Indiana in the playoff rankings?
I don't think if Indiana handles its business here, if this game is close, then maybe. I don't think it's unreasonable to be worried about that.
Okay.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too. I think as long as Indiana wins the way it should win, then it'll be fine.
Yeah, the committee has been pretty staunch about caring about the number in the loss column, and I think generally that's a good idea. I actually think they're maybe going a little bit too far with it, but if Clemson destroys South Carolina and Clemson does not make the ACC title game because Miami beat Syracuse, and Clemson's sitting there with 2 losses and one of them's to Georgia, it's just, I'm not on alert, but I have my eye on you, committee. I have my eye on you, which is why you picked Indiana to win 69-0, because you think Curt Cignetti has an eye on them too.
Yes. And also, so when we were talking to Zach Osterman in the press box, he talked about finding whatever the largest margin of victory was in the series, and Curt Cignetti angling for that. So the largest margin of victory was Purdue 68, Indiana nothing. So I went 1 point better.
Oh my God.
69-0.
You get a cigarette. God, you think like a Cignetti now. That's such a, here
is
you
there
go.
Concern body blow from playing Ohio State for Indiana, a team that does not have tremendous depth, or is Indiana or Purdue so bad that it doesn't matter? So
Curt Cignetti, I watched his news conference this week. He was talking a lot about, again, which is what he talked about after the game, which is Indiana's inability to protect. But he did not think they were physically overmatched. He thought they weren't assignment sound. He said they had 5 sacks, 3 were on missed assignments. He said only 1 time did they get beat physically. That they just got overwhelmed. So that's not what he thought it was. He said the 5 sacks for Ohio State, 3 of them were on 5-man pressures and 2 were on 4-man pressures. Now, we talked a lot about from the Ohio State side how they're very targeted in their blitzes. They're really designing it well. No wasted players in those things. So I do think Ohio State did a good job making Indiana miss assignments, but he's not talking like a guy that feels like his team got beat up physically. He's talking more like a guy that maybe the moment got a little big, the crowd noise, and the bottom line was Curtis Rourke got hit. So maybe Curtis Rourke could be a little beat up, because that he talked about a lot. He was basically, because Curtis Rourke wasn't nearly as accurate as he was in that game as he usually is. And he was saying basically, you hit a quarterback a bunch of times, and then it's going to affect him standing in and being accurate, which is what you noted when we were sitting there during the game, is you thought Curtis Rourke got sped up.
Yeah.
So maybe Curtis Rourke. I don't think the rest of it. Kurt Cignetti thought the backs ran well, Justice Ellison and Ty Lawson. So I don't think that's an issue. And then he just said, like, I'm not talking about the playoffs stuff. So, like, don't ask me about it. But he preemptively said, we're sitting in a good spot, but we've got to take care of business. So I think, like, the inside betting people, there's a lot of stuff you can do when you play one of the more physically talented teams in the country. Is there an effect a week later? I think it's smart to bring up. I don't think that means that Indiana is not going to come out and handle business against Purdue. So the one thing, Purdue played pretty decent against Michigan State. They had 6 drops in that game, including Jamal Edgerrin dropping like a double move deep shot that was right on his hands. That would have been a huge play. So Purdue was like kind of competitive last Friday night against Michigan State. So, but what does that mean? Competitive in what context? Like, they just are 4 steps below Indiana here. So I think you get a pretty good version of Indiana. So do you.
Yeah, I think you get maybe not the best version of Indiana. I think it would be tough to be the best version after that game. Because, like, but for me, it's not even like whether or not Indiana got physically overwhelmed by Ohio State. It's just a physical game.
Yes.
And I think that does. We talked about that with Penn State. Like, Penn State typically after it plays Ohio State does not play very well the following week. It did this year. So, like, I think, and Indiana just doesn't have a ton of depth. So I don't know, but I don't know that Purdue is equipped to, like, exploit that either. So I'm not super worried about it. So obviously I have 69-0.
I have 41-9 Indiana. All right, next one is our only non-Big Ten game of this preview show. It's Notre Dame at USC. This is Saturday at 3:30 Eastern. Notre Dame is favored by 7.5.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting spot to figure out exactly how good Notre Dame's defense is.
Oh,
right?
good.
It's been awesome. It's been awesome all year. I think if you dig into it and provide a little context, you could convince yourself that not that it's a smokescreen, but maybe some of it's a little misleading, right? Notre Dame has the number 1 passing defense in the country, both efficiency and yards. It's allowed 6 passing touchdowns all year. It hasn't allowed a passing touchdown in the last 4 games. It's also played 2 service academies.
Yep.
It has played Texas A&M and Northern Illinois, who both rank in the top 25 in rushing rate. It's played Georgia Tech, who wants to run the ball a lot. And the teams that it's played who do not have a high rushing rate include Purdue, Stanford, Florida State, and Virginia, who all rank 83rd or worse in yards per play. And here's the cherry on top. Of those 4 teams, offensively, Purdue's the best.
Hey, tell Ryan Walters. Let him hang out in the locker room.
So part of me does wonder if some vulnerabilities might get exposed here for Notre Dame's defense. I'm not, because it feels like their corners. I believe
like Ben Morrison's out for the year, and their corners have played well. But it's an interesting but by you.
Yeah, I am believing in the Notre Dame defense. I'm not. You look at our scores. I don't think either one of us is predicting that to happen. But it's just it's a thing to watch, I think, in this game.
Okay.
USC has moved on from Miller Moss to Jaden Maeva at quarterback. I don't know that Maeva has been really any better than Miller Moss has been, but USC has won its last 2 games. It beat Nebraska, and it won a real stinker against UCLA last week. And USC's run defense has not been very good this year. So, like, I think that lines up nicely with what Notre Dame wants to do offensively. And if Notre Dame's defense is what it has been all year statistically, then this should be a comfortable win for Notre Dame. I think the only way it's not is if there has been a little bit of I don't know, stuff along the way that has misled us a little bit on Notre Dame's defense. So we'll see if that comes to pass.
USC is not the best team that Notre Dame has played, but they have the best playmakers. They have the most explosive potential.
Louisville,
right?
maybe. Louisville might. And Louisville threw it on them a little bit.
Okay. So, I mean, that's like, you saw what, like, the second half of that Wisconsin game, for instance, when USC just kind of came to life. And again, they've been, you can look at efficiency metrics and a lot of different things. They've been a lot like Ole Miss, that they're in the numbers inside tell you they're a pretty decent team. And instead of finding ways to win, they find ways to lose. So that's maybe not a shock that Bambi and Bambi Jr., although we found a new name for Lane Kiffin this week on the betting show. I'll give you a little tease for it. For the betting show is going to be released on Thanksgiving morning, Thursday morning. We're going to call him Ralphie. We're going to call Lane Kiffin Ralphie because Tishu compared him to Ralphie in A Christmas Story. when he gets fed up and just gets on top of the bully and just starts pounding on him. And that's 3-loss Lane Kiffin is going to do that to Mississippi State this week. He's going to Ralphie him. So we have Bambi and Ralphie who do have talent and are finding ways to lose. I'm imagining, and it seems like you are too, that these are reasonable questions and then Notre Dame will answer them.
Yes. Yeah.
And also I think they're going to run on them, right? Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard in the run game. I think this is a very nice spot for Notre Dame to put an exclamation point on the end of a bounce back season since the Northern Illinois loss and like go into, when we had Dan Wetzel on the show on Monday and I asked him like how many teams can win the national title, he said 4.5 because he has Notre Dame as a half. That once you get out of that top tier of Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas, and if you want to look around, super efficient Notre Dame that's playing well on both sides of the lines and has a diverse run game, and Mitchell Evans is coming back around, and maybe there's enough with the receivers to make some plays, and they seem locked in. I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship, but like locked in Notre Dame could be fun in the playoff.
It could be fun. Yeah. Yeah. And I think Riley Leonard's taken a nice step forward as a passer too.
Yeah.
So there is more injuries on Notre Dame's defense. Freshman linebacker Kingston Viamuasa hurt his knee. He's not going to play in this game. And he's like they have 4 other linebackers, so I think they'll be okay. But he started last week against Army and has played well for a true freshman. Howard Cross, defensive tackle, has missed the last 2 games. He's been practicing, so I think there's a pretty good chance that he plays.
Okay.
But it'd be nice for Notre Dame to get him back in this one.
Yeah. Someone's asking, would you guys trade Quinshon Judkins for Jeremiah Love? It's funny. Jeremiah Love only carries the ball like 12 or 14 times a game, but like he is, you've loved Jeremiah Love all year, right?
Yeah, he's explosive.
He is. Yeah. He's explosive as all get out, man.
I might, because I think Jeremiah Love's a better receiver than Quinshon Judkins too.
Good backs in the north.
They're both really good. Yeah.
Good backs in the north. All right. So we're both picking Notre Dame pretty comfortably here. Again, Notre Dame's only favored by 7.5. So we would both take Notre Dame in that situation. Next one is Saturday at noon Eastern at Wrigley Field. Again, the second Wrigley Field game of the year for Northwestern. It's against Illinois. They play for Abe Lincoln's hat. I don't know what the name of it is, but it's a stovepipe hat trophy. Illinois is favored by 7.5. They've played it 117 times so far. Really close. Illinois leads at 55-5. Oh, that'll be a good off-season project. I would like to go through like all the rivalries that have played at least 100 times, which are the most lopsided, which are the closest. It's hard to get closer than this. Again, one of these things where the current situation can make you forget the past. Northwestern's won 7 of the last 9 in this. Like you watch these teams this year, like what? It's like, no, for real. And Northwestern won last year to keep Illinois out of a bowl. So I think Illinois is going to be mad. And Northwestern's in free fall. Northwestern has lost 4 of its last 5. They've lost to Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio State, and Michigan. They were outscored 194-30 in those 4 games. And their win in there is an overtime win against the worst team in the Power 4 in Purdue. So like they are on tilt. They were 3-3 after they won at Maryland. And we were like, Wildcats. And this was like, nope. So they're in a rough spot. And Illinois is coming off a super crazy, emotional comeback win against Rutgers last week. And like, they're going to be mad and they want to go beat their rival. And they already beat Purdue this year in overtime and got the Cannon Trophy. And now they're going to go get the Land of Lincoln Trophy. So I just think it's a very tough spot for Northwestern. I think this is like Illinois ready to put an exclamation point on the season. And I think they want to go to the Cheez-It Bowl, that's exactly how that should be. Like we're making fun of Alabama for the Cheez-It Bowl. Brett Bielema and Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant and Luke Altmaier and Gabe Akis and Miles Scott and Xavier Scott, go fill up on Cheez-Its, man. Come on. Like that is a tremendous reward for this Illinois season. So give me Illinois against a fraudulent, could have been playoff team from the SEC in a bowl game and let Brett Bielema do his thing. But for now, they have to handle business against Northwestern, and I think they will.
Is that the tie-in? Is that where they would go? Citrus Bowl.
I saw talk about. I mean, it's SEC. It's SEC.
Yeah.
Big Ten, and Illinois is like they're the highest ranked Big Ten team that's not going to be in the playoff.
Right. I think they. Yeah. I think you're right. I think it would be that bowl.
Yeah. So it's just context.
Yeah.
Like, again, Nick Saban's program, the modern college football dynasty, we mock them for the Cheez-It Bowl. Illinois, which missed a bowl last year, we praise them for the Cheez-It Bowl because context matters. So do you think
either way? I think either way they're going to, because it's either it's the Citrus Bowl, which is the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, or the ReliaQuest Bowl, which is the old Outback Bowl, and that's both Big Ten versus SEC.
Okay. So Illinois, Alabama, let's go. Let's get ready, Kalen. Brett's coming for you. But I have Illinois 28, Northwestern 14. Do you think Northwestern can give them a game?
I have 26-20. I think it is maybe more likely that Illinois puts it on them, because I don't know who decided that Northwestern had to play Ohio State and Michigan back-to-back, but I bet that wasn't fun for Northwestern. So,
yeah.
We would talk about body blows and what kind of physical shape a team might be in coming into this game. I think it is possible that Illinois rolls them here, but I picked it close because they're playing for Abe Lincoln's hat. So I have 26-20.
Yeah, it's a very nice hat. I mean, I love it. He's from Illinois. You know that? You ever been there? You ever been to Springfield, Illinois? Walk around where Abe Lincoln had his law practice or something there. I don't know. They have like a little fake town there. I walked around there. I like history. I have a book. It's like a national park book that you get stamps in. It's like a national park passport book. And then every time you go, whether it's a national park or like a historic site like that, then you get a stamp. And I have a mug. I even have a mug that says I got stamped because I like history and whatever, but I love getting stamps in my book. Oh,
yeah.
I like the satisfaction of like, yes, I experienced the Rutherford B. Hayes Presidential Library. And I have proof. Stamp. Oh my God. When I'm retired, when I'm done with this, when I'm not at Disney World, I'm going to be hitting every place with the stamp. And then it's more like if I go and the stamp place is closed, I don't even want to see it.
I got pretty depressed the other day because I had to renew my passport. And my old passport that I got 10 years ago, I only ever took one trip with it. It had one stamp in it. Yeah.
Oh, let's get next 10 years. Let's get you more stamps, Philly Billy.
I would love to get more stamps.
Yeah. Just send your boy over here whenever you need to. We'd love to hang out with him, and you and the wife can go on a lovely trip. All right, last one before we get to the big game breakdown. It's Rutgers at Michigan State, Saturday, 3:30 Eastern. I'm a little surprised that Michigan State's favored in this game. I don't know. Michigan State's favored by 2.
I'm not 100. I mean, I guess like Michigan State favored by 1.5 at home. You're kind of not favored, I guess.
Yeah.
If you assume the 3 points are being the home team, a win makes Michigan State bowl eligible. In Jonathan Smith's first year, Rutgers has already gotten that. I don't know that this game deserves a whole lot of conversation. I think it is two teams that have kind of average to at times not very good passing defenses. So I hope both quarterbacks can have a nice day. Ethan Callahan minus for Rutgers and Aiden Childs for Michigan State. And I think like Michigan State has Montorie Foster and Nick Marsh, like they have some receiver firepower. So I'm rolling with Sparty and those receivers. 20, but in a close one, 28-27.
I'm rolling with Mad Greg.
Yeah.
That Illinois loss, oh my God. Got to stick in the craw.
Do you think they're mad or are they sad?
No, I think they're mad. I think Greg will make sure they're mad. They had the close loss at Nebraska on the road this year like this. Again, this was set up for maybe a really good season for Rutgers, and then they got injured, and then they had some stuff go against them. And so they are going to go to a bowl, but I don't think they lay down here, and I think they can do enough defensively to like give Aiden Childs a rough time. And again, as we talked about with Michigan State, it's like, okay, they let Purdue, again, the drops for Purdue, they kind of let a bad Purdue team sort of hang around. Last week was like, what is happening? I don't think Michigan State's that good. So
yeah, they have real problems on their offensive line. Their defense has been banged up for much of the season. So I thought they were going to run away with the Purdue game. I think I sent a message to you and Mike like in the first half of that game, and I think I said that Purdue football is an abomination.
Yeah.
and then Purdue hung around and that got a chance to win.
Yeah. They had like the tying touchdown on their fingertips. So I have Rutgers 31-16. I think this is like Rutgers goes and takes care of business. I think like top to bottom right now. super interested to see what Michigan State is next year
Mm-hmm.
with Aiden Childs and Nick Marsh and Jonathan Smith in year 2. Super, super, super interested. Just some bumps in year 1. Whereas this was sort of like a peak year for Rutgers that didn't peak as high as it could have, but they're still much more in like this is a win now year for us.
They're
compared
old.
to Michigan State.
They got some guys who were on their last go around here.
It's like, go finish this off. This off. So I actually have a pretty convincing win. I have 31-16 Rutgers. You have 28-27 Michigan State. Okay. Those are all the Northern games this week except one. Ohio State, Michigan big game breakdown is next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, I do love it. I imagine sometimes what it's like to be producer Mike, when I'm like, yeah, they're playing for a stovepipe hat thing, and he just types Land of Lincoln Trophy in the chat. Yeah. It's like, I know, I'm sorry, I'm dumb with knowing things. It's Mike, is it hard sometimes when you're listening to me and you're like, my God, this guy?
No, not at all. It's rather entertaining sometimes because I'm like, oh, I'll go look that up real quick. I was going to say, too, we were talking about Bill's passport and only getting one stamp. We've discussed it. Aren't we going to Ireland next year?
Heck yeah. We just got to tell our boss that we are.
Yeah. Well, we'll tell him that. We got to get a stamp for Bill's passport.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to Dublin.
That's right. Here's our expense report.
Yeah, exactly.
But Bill, you have to show your passport on the show. So we have I like the idea of not knowing what a thing is and just guessing. So we have a thing in our family still. Like I couldn't think of the name Mrs. Doubtfire for that movie one time. And I was just saying, that movie, and I called it Chocolate Stove Cans, and which doesn't make sense. It sounds like you're mid-stroke. It's like this, but we still call that movie Chocolate Stove Cans now. So my advice is, in life, if you can't think of the thing you're trying to say, just guess. Yeah, because maybe something funny will come out.
Chocolate Stove Cans.
That's what it's like to live with me. I think people know what's up. My wife is out of town, so she's not downstairs listening and like shaking her head in disgust at what I am. Mm-hmm. But I think people get an idea. I want that for this show, for people to know what it's like to be married to us through this show.
Yeah.
Bill.
Somebody That's what I do with my wife.
Yeah.
She asks me a question, I don't know the answer. I just make something up.
Just like, make it up.
Maybe she doesn't know that what I'm going to say is wrong, so I'll just say it.
Yeah.
We had a show on Monday night here in Columbus talking about Ohio State, Michigan, and someone came up to me afterwards and said, like, what's the deal with Doug? I said, what you see is what you get.
Yeah. For real. Like, could I make this up? This is not that Edward Norton movie, right? This is not one of those where it's like, and then off screen, I'm like, oh no, I'm an evil. No, this is 24/7. This is what you get. Ohio State, Michigan, big game breakdown. It's the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting. People are fired up for it. It is at noon in Ohio Stadium on Saturday. Ohio State is favored by 20.5, Bill, which is a pretty big margin for this game. And we're going to break this down starting with the Ohio State offense versus the Michigan defense.
We are. It's also going to be very cold for this game, too.
Ooh.
Little polar vortex action, I think. It's going to be quite frosty for this game. I don't think any snow, but cold. Yeah, Ohio State offense versus Michigan defense, I think it's two questions. Can Ohio State block Michigan's front? Can Michigan cover Ohio State's receivers? And I think, right, if you watch these two teams play all year, there are reasons to believe, like I either side of that. I think, especially the Ohio State's offensive line against the Michigan defensive line, which is maybe the more pertinent matchup here. It's the second game for Ohio State's reworked offensive line following the injury to center Seth McLaughlin. Carson Hinsman is at center. Austin Saravelt is at left guard. Donovan Jackson, the former left guard, remains at left tackle. The right side has been unchanged more or less for the entire season for Ohio State. And, I thought they played okay against Indiana. I thought the pass protection was actually pretty good for the most part. The run game was a little fits and starts, but kind of got rolling a little bit more in the second half. So I thought for like a debut of a reworked offensive line against a good defensive front, it was pretty good. But now here comes the test. Like here comes, I think when that happened, people were thinking more about this game than they were the Indiana game and how Ohio State might be able to handle Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore. Michigan's got like kind of 6 guys it rolls with up front, but those are the main 4. And the big 2 in the middle are Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Among starting / contributing defensive linemen in the FBS, Josiah Stewart is number 3 in overall defensive grade on PFF. Mason Graham is number 8. They have both lived up to the billing this year, and Stewart has taken a major leap forward, stepping into a bigger role for the defense. They both have 33 pressures, 1 off the edge, 1 in the interior. They both have combined for 51 stops, which is that PFF metric of like how many plays you make that represent a failure for the opposing offense, like a tackle for a loss, a sack. I don't know if that actually, I think it might even include plays that like impact your success rate negatively, even if it's not necessarily for a loss. So 51 combined for those 2 guys. They're both really good. This is the strength by far of what Michigan does, and Ohio State's offensive line. I think at the very least you'd have to consider a little vulnerable, only because this is the second game they're playing now with a new group. So I think you watch that, and then you watch if Ohio State can give Will Howard time to throw, which I think they will be able to. The matchups in the secondary. Will Johnson has not played the last 4 games for Michigan. I've been operating under the assumption that he is not going to come back this year. Sharon Moore keeps saying like, we'll see, which is
There's
what he
been a
also
report
said.
like that ESPN said that like he's not
Pete
going to be back. But
Pete Thamel last week when he said that Will Johnson was not going to play against Northwestern, said he's not expected to play again this season. Sharon Moore obviously is not saying that publicly, but I think that's probably the right assumption to make, is that Will Johnson is not going to play in this game. Michigan also kind of oddly last week benched Jair Hill, who had started at the other corner spot all year. He played 4 snaps against Northwestern, and Sharon Moore really wouldn't say why. He also changed his number, and Sharon Moore wouldn't say why that was the case. But in his spot, they started Zeke Berry, who had been the starting nickel on the outside, Amir Hall, who's a transfer from Albany at the other outside spot, and Makari Page, who had been playing safety, moved into the slot. So I think you're going to get a reworked Michigan secondary here, too, against Ohio State's receivers, which I don't know is a great spot for anybody to be in when you're matching up with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Emeka Egbuka.
I admire the attempt to get better, though, like not just resting on it.
I don't know if it was like there have been times like Jair Hill has definitely been a liability at times. Texas and Washington really attacked him. He had allowed in coverage against Texas and Washington. Jair Hill allowed 15 receptions for 194 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he's been okay in other games. Like I thought he was okay against Indiana, the last game that he started before getting benched against Northwestern. Like Zeke Berry has been attacked. Washington and USC, he allowed 14 combined receptions for 205 yards and 3 touchdowns. Amir Hall against Oregon, 5 targets, 5 receptions, 126 yards and 1 touchdown. I just kind of think the secondary is open for business if you can give your quarterback time. And
it's hard for Michigan. Like Josh Wallace was such a big part of what they did last year that they got him out of the portal from UMass, right? And they slid him in that second corner spot outside opposite Will Johnson. It was like, we're good there, right? We have an All-American on one side, but we don't have a hole on the other side. And then Mike Sainristil in the slot was as good as it gets. Yeah. So like Mike Sainristil was one of my favorite players in the North last year. So it's like, well, Will Johnson's still there. So I think you could look and say, oh, well, Will Johnson's there. Man, they're really missing him. But actually what they're really missing is that they didn't fill in that second corner spot the way they did with Josh Wallace last year. And Mike Sainristil was a baller. So like it's the other spots in the secondary that have been, I think, even more problematic than the fact that Will Johnson hasn't played in a month.
Yeah, and I don't think Goldfish is asking in the chat. Like I don't think cold weather means you can't throw the ball. It's not supposed to be windy. There's not supposed to be any precipitation. It's just going to be cold. So
wind's the issue. Yep.
Wind's the issue, and there's not supposed to be any. So I don't think that neuters Ohio State's passing attack in any way here. I guess I don't know. I don't understand like barometric pressures and whether or not the ball travels the same way through the air when it's cold or not. But I'm going to assume that the chilly weather will not impact.
But wait,
Ohio
you
State's
said you took a meteorology class, and
I did for one day, and then I dropped it.
So there, you didn't talk about barometric pressure on day one?
No, that they told us we're going to have labs, and I was like, this is not for me. So I'm not going to take this class.
Did you take it just because you wanted to stand in front of the green screen and go like this and be like, these are clouds?
I took it because I just thought it'd be. You had to take like science credits, and I do not have a scientific nor do I have a mathematic mind, so I tried to find the easiest ones I could take. And I thought it's like, oh, snow, rain, clouds, sunshine. That's probably pretty easy, and it was not. I also took a probability math class that I thought would be easy, and it definitely was not. I like struggled to get a C. Thankfully, I passed that.
Oh yeah.
No.
I took statistics as like the only thing of like possibly to try to survive college math. Okay, well that would have been really helpful now, as it turns out. If you are a young journalism major in college right now and you hope to have a college football podcast one day, a YouTube show, and you can take a weather class, Fancy Stats Landis says take it, right?
That's right. Yeah, that is right. There's a couple other things, like just I think maybe to illustrate a little bit how different Michigan's defense is. Michigan was number one in defensive efficiency last year. It was also number one in points per drive, available yards, touchdown rate, first down rate, and busted drive rate, which is drives that are 0 or negative yards. It was basically just like number one in everything, according to Brian Fermo's drive data last year. This year, it's 21st in defensive efficiency, which makes it the fourth best defense by that metric that Ohio State has played this year. Penn State, Oregon, and Iowa were all better, and Indiana is one spot behind them. Okay. Again, they were first in all these things last year. Now they're 45th in points per drive, 41st in available yards, 36th in touchdown rate, 40th in first down rate, and 48th in busted drive rate. They lost their coordinator. They lost a lot of guys in the NFL draft. They don't have as much depth as they did a year ago. They've played better teams this year than they played last year. I was part of it. They had a super easy schedule until they got to Ohio State, or probably to Penn State and Ohio State last year. But even like if you look at some of the snap counts, Mason Graham played 442 snaps all of last year. He's played 501 snaps already this year.
So Michigan he's played more in 11 games than he played in 15. Games.
Well, he only played 13, but he's played more in 11 games than he played in 13. Kenneth Grant has played more in 11 games than he played in 15 games last year. Michigan had 6 defensive linemen play 400 snaps last year. This year, it only has 3 who have played that many snaps. So it's just a different. And now they're dealing with stuff in the secondary with Will Johnson out. Rod Moore has been out all year. The safety got hurt in the preseason. So like it's not the same Michigan defense that has given Ohio State problems the last 3 years during this 3-game winning streak.
Extraordinarily deep defense last year. And this is one of those things. Their defense is good. Last year it was great.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's the shorthanded. We're not saying they have a bad defense. We're saying they were a defense-driven team last year that was blowing people up and playing 17 guys. So like the big part of it was coming into this year is that because they played so many guys last year, even though they lost a lot on defense, they brought a lot back. Right. But they didn't. So they still have a good top tier, but they're not as deep. Yeah. And then the Will Johnson and then not being able to fill in defensively. The one thing is, and I'm sorry, I'm obsessed with this. I just am obsessed with Derek Harmon, the Oregon defensive tackle, who I thought was maybe the best player in the Oregon-Ohio State game. PFF defensive tackle grades in the Power 4. Derek Harmon from Oregon is number 9. Mason Graham from Michigan is number 1. And they are the top 2 guys in the North. And then Rayshon Benny from Michigan is actually tied with Derek Harmon. But I would guess on our postseason all KOTN first team at defensive tackle, is it probably Derek Harmon and Mason Graham? Is that what we're talking about here?
Definitely.
So then Derek Harmon, I mean, he had the fumble that he forced on Quinshon Judkins. He's just got interior pressure that was a problem. And again, that Ohio State lost Seth McLaughlin, who was the linchpin of offensive line at center, and we said they filled in pretty good last week. I'm just to what degree can Mason Graham not like win it, but like affect this game? Can he really blow up 12 plays in this game? Like how
12 seems like a lot, because I don't know that Derek Harmon blew up 12 plays, right?
Yeah. Can he make 4 super impactful plays, whether it's like forcing a turnover or making a stop on a 3rd or down or 4th down short yardage play, or maybe getting 1 sack? But what does that mean? But I'm anticipating that. It's just like, I'm anticipating Mason Graham having a good game. Then the question is like, well, what does that mean for Michigan? Like, so answer my question. Like, help me, ball knower. Like, what does that mean?
Derek Harmon and Menno. For Derek Harmon, it meant Ohio State still scoring 31 points, right? So
yes,
I think Mason Graham probably stands a very good chance to have a nice game here against inexperienced guards. And Carson Hinsman is not an inexperienced center. He started 12 games last year, including against Mason Graham. But he's new to the spot for the last 2 weeks this season. So he'll be hard to deal with. And I think Kenneth Grant might give him some problems too. I don't know if that unravels things, because I think Ohio State will be able to get the answers if it needs to kind of contend with that. Well, like, I've been waiting for a game. I thought like the Penn State game was going to be a heavy screen game for Ohio State, and it wasn't. It actually came out last week and threw a couple of screens against Indiana. Both got called back for blocks in the back. They're like tight end screens to the outside. But there's more there to get to if Ohio State feels like it needs to do that it hasn't really done much yet. It can get the ball on the perimeter pretty quickly in a pretty effective way, I think, to neutralize some of that if interior pressure becomes a problem. Travion Henderson's been a very good pass blocking running back for Ohio State this year. So I think it will be a lot to deal with, and could very well be something that will force Ohio State to change its plan on the fly. But I just trust Ohio State's ability to make those adjustments and score enough anyway. Because the other part of it is like, is Michigan going to score more than 2 touchdowns in this game? Right? Like I don't know that I'd feel super confident in that, given how that offense has played this year. So even if it is a harder day for Ohio State's offense, I think even like 21 points gets it done for the Buckeyes. So we'll see. It's a spot to watch. I even think like Josiah Stewart going up against Donovan Jackson and Josh Fryer at the tackle position is a spot to watch too, because Donovan Jackson,
Josiah Stewart has been dominant at times this year.
Abdul Carter gave him some problems. Mikal Kamara a little bit last week, right? So like the Josiah Stewart is going to win his too. So I don't think Ohio State is going to like necessarily like steamroll Michigan's defense. But it's been pretty battle tested and has had to play some pretty good defenses already with the reworked offensive line, and has come out looking pretty good, I think, in those games. So I have a decent amount of belief that they'll be able to do it again.
Okay. So that's answer the question of, can Michigan score 2 touchdowns by doing Michigan offense versus Ohio State defense? Colston Loveland is the other question here. He missed the second half of the Northwestern game last week. And again, in talking about will Johnson play, will Colston Loveland play? It felt like Sharon Moore felt encouraged about Colston Loveland's ability to be back. Just a reminder about how good he is. I don't know what we're going to do on the all KOTN Northern team. Tight end targets this year in the nation. Ty Warren at Penn State and Aranda Gadsden at Syracuse are tied for first with 91. Colston Loveland has 84 targets, but he's missed a game and a half. Otherwise, he'd be up there with those guys or maybe ahead of them. Targets for Michigan, 84 for Loveland. Next are their 2 receivers, Ty Morris and Samaj Morgan, with 34 and 33. That's how much they lean on Colston Loveland in the pass game. He is awesome. He's had at least 8 targets in 7 games. He's 3rd in catches among Power 4 tight ends. He's 4th in yardage. The only other, so Gadsden and Warren are both ahead of him, and Max Clare from Purdue's ahead of him. Great tight ends. We nailed that. We talked about that preseason in the North. Great tight ends. Colston Loveland is a dude. And the game that I don't know if people have been talking about this a lot. It's immediately where my head went for this game, with a struggling Michigan team, struggling on offense, coming in against a very highly ranked Ohio State team. In 2013, Michigan was having real problems on offense. The previous 4 games, they had scored 6, 13, 9 points in regulation, and then it went into overtime, and 21 in their previous 4 games coming into that Ohio State game. And then they lost 42-41. Al Borges, the offensive coordinator for Michigan, got fired at the end of the year. But in that game, it was like, where has this been? What happened? This Michigan offense was dead. How did they play so well? But that Michigan offense had shown life earlier in the year. Devin Gardner was the quarterback. That was an announcer game. The 2 stars of that Michigan offense against Ohio State that year were Devin Gardner and Jake Butt. So now they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Gardner was 32 of 45 for 451 and 4 touchdowns against Ohio State that day. But he had thrown for 500 against Indiana earlier in the year. They had Jeremy Gallon, who was a 1,000-yard receiver. Jake Butt had 5 catches for 85. So anyway, my point is that's where my head went. I wonder if other people thought about that at all. Because the whole thing of that day as we were watching that game was, where has this been for Michigan? I cannot believe Michigan has discovered an offense in this game against an Ohio State team with national title aspirations. Could that happen this year? That's why I bring it up. And I'll answer my own question, and the answer is no. So, I was like, aha, maybe I found it. And it's like, no, this is not that. This is just nothing. And the thing that it was most interesting, but here's the thing, in that game, they threw a lot of screens. They threw a lot of tight end throwbacks, right? So this is, if they're going to try to get anything going with the passing game, Landis, which has been this and that passing game all year, as people know, it's going to have to be using aggression against Ohio State. Okay, we think they're going to blitz. Let's set up some, roll right, throwback left. They're going to try to burn them on that stuff. That's the only hope. So if they can get in there and Kirk Campbell can scheme it up, right, and use Ohio State's defensive confidence against them, that's their only chance. And that's at least, I think, something that happened in 2013 that we could see a version of that here, which would be let's get the ball to Colston Loveland 15 times and constantly be doing it with things where we're trying to throw off the defense.
Ohio State changed defensive coordinators after 2013, right? That defense was bad.
Yes, they fired Everett Withers and brought in Chris Ash in 2014. So yes.
Yeah. 2013 Ohio State defense gave up the 2nd most offensive yards in program history. The 5th most yards per game in program history, and the 3rd most touchdowns in program.
So listen,
history.
I already said it's not it. You don't have to rub it in my face. I'm looking for points here. I was like, listen, I think this could be true, but it's not. And you were like, yeah, by the way, it's not. On either side of the ball.
I'm only saying that because this is not the first time that you and I have talked about this 2013 game, and I had mentioned it to somebody else the other day, and they're like, yeah, but that defense was awful. I was like, okay, point taken.
Point taken. So the other thing that this brings up to me is 2017 Michigan, when John O'Korn was the quarterback against Ohio State, in a year when they had played Wilton Spate and Brandon Peters, and then O'Korn was the guy, and it's John O'Korn was not good, but he was 17 of 32 for 195 in that game, and that was a little more competitive than you would have expected. That was a game where JT Barrett got hurt and Dwayne Haskins had to come in and save Ohio State. Michigan jumped out to a 14-0 lead, and Ohio State only led 21-20 entering the 4th quarter, and it's oh my God, John O'Korn is somehow making this a game. I don't think it's going to happen. But my overall point is, we've seen Michigan bad offenses sometimes before coming into the Ohio State-Michigan game, and then they played a little better than you thought
100%.
In the Ohio State-Michigan game. That's my point about this. So that's the only point I'm going to make. The thing that surprised me in the research here was, I would have thought, Michigan can't throw it, and that's affecting the run game. Actually, it's a reminder that last year that Michigan did not run it that great from an efficiency standpoint. Their yards per carry were not good. And I was looking at their rushing success rate from last year as a national championship team, and I thought the stats were wrong. I thought I was looking at the wrong stats. So their running game is very much the same. They're averaging 4.47 yards per carry this year. They averaged 4.5 yards per carry last year. So it's not that Michigan can't throw it and that's ruining the run game. It's that Michigan can't throw it and Michigan can't throw it. You know what I mean? They're running it kind of like they ran it last year. And I know this Michigan offensive line is not as good as last year's offensive line, But the run game numbers aren't that different. They just can't throw. And I was like, Davis Warren has been better the second time around than he was the first time around. So I was looking up like, the last month since Davis Warren started starting again on a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
He's 56th out of 72 big power 4 quarterbacks in that stretch, but his ADOT is last. So his average depth of target, while he's been playing better the last month, is the lowest. Like they're throwing 3-yard passes the whole time. Right. Yep. They have nothing down the field. They have 17 pass plays of 20 yards or more. Michigan does. That's 131st in the nation. They're only ahead of Oklahoma, Army, and Iowa. Last year, they had 51 pass plays for the whole season of 20 yards or more. That was 29th in the country. So the run game is kind of the same. They just can't throw it. There's no offensive explosion. Colston Loveland's their whole passing game, and they are going to have to scheme the heck out of it to get anything going to him. It's going to be hard.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have a few and hit on all of them trick plays, I think,
yes,
to hang with Ohio. And like they brought trick plays to the table in the past, right?
They have.
So we saw it was the Michigan State game. They hit the Donovan Edwards double or halfback pass for a touchdown. I
would expect Donovan Edwards to throw a pass in this game.
They had a couple screens, the Colston Loveland that got out for big hits. So like that's what it's got to be. You got to Ohio State's defense has been pretty aggressive since the Oregon game. It's practically like doubled its blitz rate since that game. In a really effective way that like really shined against Indiana last week when it got 5 sacks. But maybe you can try to use that against Ohio State and get them out of position and try to hit a couple of those gadget plays. We'll see. I thought it was odd that Alex Orji didn't play at all last week.
Yeah, I don't.
The Alex Orji rushing package against Indiana was awful. So like maybe they should just shelve it, and they've come to that realization. But still, he didn't play at all last week. Davis Warren played 70 snaps in a game that Michigan won 50-6. So I really do think the only pathway is like really scheme it up, and I don't know that I trust Kirk Campbell to be the guy that's going to do that against Jim Knowles. The other thing that's on my mind is in that Indiana-Michigan game, Michigan's defense played really well in the second half of that game and totally shut Indiana out. Indiana hounded Davis Warren all game. They pressured him on 60% of his dropbacks. I was at that game, and afterward, like Aiden Fisher was like, "Yeah, we had him on the run the whole time. We felt pretty good about what we were doing to get after him." And like, why would an Ohio State be able to do nearly the exact same thing, right?
So I wonder about that. Of the 76 Power 4 quarterbacks who qualify, Davis Warren under pressure ranks 38th of the 76, which is in the middle. Mm-hmm. In clean pockets, he's 59th out of 76. So,
but against the blitz specifically, whether he's pressured or not, he's pretty low, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would over blitz, right? I think I would. You're just not scared. You're not scared of the Michigan receivers. And so I think you can play coverage and not go crazy blitzing, and then just make sure you have a plan for Colston Loveland. So whether that's
I think mostly
Sonny Styles, whatever you're going to do there.
I think if I've said this before, I feel like if Davis Warren needs to do anything other than throw to the first read in his progression, you've probably won that down. So.
And I thought Michigan's run game the second half against Northwestern last week looked as good as it has at any point this season, and that's not nothing. Mm-hmm. Mullings had a little bit of a dip there, but they did run the ball, and I thought they got back to some version of what they looked like last year, which is some precision. Here comes the tight end leading through the hole. Offensive linemen are getting to the second level. I thought that was like a little bit of momentum for Michigan offensively, but the bar has been so low for this Michigan offense last year. It's like, okay, Davis Warren's playing a little better, and their run game's coming around a little bit, but that's maybe creeping towards slightly functional instead of we're going to get shut out, but I don't know that it means it's competitive. So,
do you think Jim Knowles was asked about this last week going into the Indiana game about Curtis Rourke and his pass being a fairly effective runner, but he hadn't done it a ton for Indiana this year. And then Indiana didn't really run Curtis Rourke until the game was already out of hand last week. I think Davis Warren is actually pretty athletic. And obviously Alex Orji can run. I wonder if we might see like an increased quarterback run situation here from Michigan. Jim Knowles made the point that like he said he feels pretty good about how Ohio State has handled designed quarterback runs, but where they've gotten burned is on scrambles and draws. So maybe that's something to look out for if Michigan can at the very least like sustain some drives and keep the ball away from Ohio State via the quarterback scramble or quarterback draw.
Yeah, I mean, I'd run the borderline single wing here. And I mean, look like a service academy and don't throw any pass more than 5 yards past the line of scrimmage and just hope that you can dial some stuff up where all of a sudden you're flipping a throwback to Colston Loveland and you have 3 blockers ahead of him and you have a chance to hit something. You block up a bubble screen really well to one of your receivers. And otherwise you're running the option and calling quarterback draws and running a full house backfield and trying to eat up clock. And I think they might for some portion of the game. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a version of that works to some degree early for Michigan. I just don't know that they can sustain it. And their offense is going to be under such pressure because I do think the Ohio State offense is going to score to some degree. And then it's like, okay, time to answer. What trick do you have for us now? Because there's nothing in the pass game that you're actually going to hit based on like winning matchups. Right.
Yeah.
So they're not going to win matchups. So
the history we have sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. We have a prediction in the chat from Robert who said that four different Michigan players will attempt a forward pass.
I love that. Because I'm not so sure I wouldn't go to a Colston Loveland Ty Warren package. Like whatever Penn State does with Ty Warren, do that with Colston Loveland plus Alex Orji, Donovan Edwards joining Davis Warren and throwing the ball. I'd like to see that, but probably get like plus like 20-1 on that. I'd make that bet for the $2 Dougie bet. I think there's 2 lines that you can draw in looking at the modern history of the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. You can either start with Woody Hayes in 1951, or you can start with Bo Schembechler in 1969. I looked at since 1969, so the last 55 Ohio State-Michigan games, when a team has been ranked and the other team has been unranked. So ranked at all versus unranked. The ranked team is 11-5. So I do think people like to talk about upsets and things that you don't expect. I mean, what really this series is, and I have a lot more information about it, but the bottom line is when both teams are in the top 10, it's basically even. When both teams are unranked, it's basically even. And then when there's a pretty decent disparity of one team's good and one team's not, the team that's good wins most of the time. But the other times get stuck in your head, understandably. So, since 1969, the 5 times that an unranked team has beaten a ranked team in this game. 1981, Ohio State 14, number 7, Michigan 9. 1982, Ohio State 24, number 13, Michigan 14. 1993, Michigan 28, number 5, Ohio State 0. That is the nightmare situation for Ohio State fans. 2001, Jim Tressel. Ohio State 26, number 11, Michigan 20. And 2004, Ohio State 37, number 7, Michigan 21. So it's happened 5 times. The unranked team has beaten the ranked teams. 4 times it was Ohio State. The one time it was Michigan was like the beginning of the John Cooper rivalry nightmare, right? So that's going to stick in people's minds. But the one thing about the history here, Landis, and we're going to do a Kings of Columbus show for the Ohio State audience where we'll dig into this much more. But if you guys are not Ohio State fans, but you want to find that, you can find it on the podcast feed. We do these shows for the North, and then we do have local shows. I actually don't think this is a vibes game. I don't think it's a feelings game. I think it's a ball game. And the thing that is different compared to every other game in the Ryan Day era is that Michigan's not a top 10 team and Ohio State's very good and Michigan is not. And I'm not sure this game is much fancier than that. And I think Michigan will be good again someday. They're not good this year. And Ohio State is very good. And it's like, hey, Ohio State's learned less. I don't know. Michigan's not good. I don't know what, like, this is. And yes, I understand. Throw out the records. Okay, well, not entirely. Because ranked teams are 11-5 against unranked teams in the last 55 years. And Michigan's won once. So throw out the records, but like, not all the way, because actually, usually the ranked team wins here.
Yeah, and I don't know how many of the ranked teams that lost those games were coming in having lost 3 straight.
Yeah, like, I mean, listen, really, now we're back to 13 because 13 would fit. That's one of those times the ranked team beat the unranked team, but they won because Tyvis Powell intercepted a 2-point conversion, and Michigan gave Ohio State everything they could handle and more in that game. Braxton Miller saved Ohio State in that game. Ohio State could not stop Michigan in that game when the Michigan offense had been dead. But we've already covered that. So I mean, it's just I just don't want people to go too far with the throw out the records. You never know what's going to happen. It's like, well, when there's this much of a disparity between the teams, you kind of actually do know what's going to happen most of the time. But that is not what it has been since Ryan Day took over at Ohio State. So
there's also I've also heard like this spread's too big. Last year was a 6-point game. The year before was 22 points. Before that, it was 15 points. Those are all Michigan wins. The 3 Ohio State wins prior to that were 29 points, 23 points, and 11 points. So like teams can win this game lopsidedly too.
Yeah.
Like they're not all double overtime.
So anyway, I mean, we just know what the deal is. I thought that was a great second half by Michigan last week. I thought that was a stand up, show who you are, overwhelm an overmatched team, keep the pedal down, go into this game on the highest high you could imagine, right? Given the circumstances of this season for Michigan. Credit to Michigan for that. They're not going to come in and roll over for this game. But the talent disparity, especially when it comes to throwing the ball, is vast. So our picks, what do you have for this game?
I have Ohio State winning 38-13. I just don't think that they can. I think eventually the Ohio State's ability to throw the ball will become too much for Michigan to handle. I don't think Michigan can cover Ohio State's receivers for 4 quarters. I've been a lot on like Ohio State will come and establish the run and like it's finally going to break through. And like I don't think that would favor Ohio State in this game. I think if it tries to play a game in the trenches, I think it would still win, but I think it'd be closer, and that would Michigan probably would love to play a game like that. Will Howard has played really well in big games. He's played really well all year, but he's played especially good in big games against the 4 best defenses Ohio State has faced so far this year, that being Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, and Iowa. He has completed 79.1% of his passes for 918 yards at 8.3 yards per attempt. 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 3 rushing touchdowns.
Pretty good. And then, like the thing you said, so Will Johnson is the pick 6 game changer guy. That if you put Will Johnson in this game, right? Will Howard threw a pick 6 to open the Penn State game. Will Johnson is the guy who makes that play for Michigan in this game. Yeah. Mason Graham's really good. The 2 guys who have the ability to like score for the defense are Will Johnson on a pick 6 and Josiah Stewart on a strip sack. Josiah Stewart, I think there's a chance Josiah Stewart could be a real problem for Donovan Jackson and Josh Fryer at tackle for Ohio State. And we've mentioned that. I think that could be a real problem on a couple snaps. But if Will Johnson's not there, then I think you like very much decrease the chances of Michigan being able to do something like that. And you need a shock to the system play. And it's not like Will Howard has made mistakes like that constantly, but they have cropped up here and there. Michigan absolutely needs something like that, and I don't know that they're going to get it if Will Johnson doesn't play. So I have Ohio State 31-16. That means I would take Michigan with the points. You would take Ohio State giving the points. I certainly can see like a close, like a competitive game for the first 3 or 4 drives, right? Where Michigan's trying to sit on it.
Ohio State, Indiana last week. Yeah.
I think it very much could be a version of that with Michigan and that front 4 having an enhanced ability to maybe even make a couple more plays up front. But we saw like on the goal line, Mikhail Kamara made a play, right, for Indiana to have a goal line stand against Ohio State. So like I could see a version of that, but over 60 minutes, I just don't know how Michigan can hang while generating very little offense. So 16 to me is 1 touchdown and 3 field goals from Michigan. They have a good kicker.
They do have a good kicker who was not a Lou Groza Award finalist, by the way, even though his like numbers are better than all the finalists.
And neither was Ben Sauls, who was like the best player on Pitt's roster. There's a lot of complaints, a bunch of different directions with all the award finalists right now, but all 3 kickers were from the South, and we have some boomers in the North that I was like, I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah.
All right. Those are our picks for Ohio State, Michigan. Quick break. When we come back, 3 Cram It games, and then what you watching, what you eating, what you thinking. I will unveil the Thanksgiving side that has been sitting here that I made before the show. We'll do that next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lamreese, Bill Landis. If you want to give us a thumbs up, if you want to subscribe, if you want to tell a friend, we certainly would appreciate all of that here on Kings of the North. Thursday morning, Thanksgiving morning, the betting show. Bets of the North will drop in your feed. We will not have this show on Thursday. We never have this show on Friday. So Thursday morning betting show. Friday, go shopping, watch football, go to a movie, no stuff from us, or catch up on anything you missed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Saturday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, live YouTube postgame show. Bill Landis, you and producer Mike will be at Ohio State-Michigan this week.
Oh, yeah. I forgot Mike was going. Yeah. We'll be there. Yeah. We will be at Ohio State-Michigan, and you're going to be sprinting through the cornfields of Iowa.
I will be. I will be at Nebraska at Iowa on Friday night, and I will be at Kansas State at Iowa State on Saturday night. And as it turns out, my in-laws live in between there, and so I get to have a Thanksgiving dinner with my in-laws, which will be lovely. So I'm excited to go see my Iowa family. So it all worked out. Yeah. Cram It games and Whatcha. First Cram It game for this. We did a couple other Cram It games on Tuesday as well. South Carolina at Clemson. This matters. We talked about it. Like, could they be setting up something to screw with Indiana? I hope not. This is a noon game. Clemson's favored by 12.5. Clemson's favored by 2.5, Bill.
2.5. Yeah. So Clemson's won 8 of the last 9. South Carolina won 2 years ago in Clemson to snap a 7-game losing streak. As mentioned, I think a win here for either team could position them well for an at-large berth. Clemson is still alive for the ACC championship if Miami were to lose to Syracuse and Clemson wins here. I don't think Clemson's
this isn't an ACC game for Clemson, so actually they don't.
It wouldn't matter. You're right. Correct.
Yeah.
Right. They could lose either way. Yeah, this team Miami to lose. Correct. I don't think Clemson's very good. I haven't thought Clemson's been very good all year. I actually think South Carolina is pretty good. I know we've talked about the SEC circle of suck. But I don't mind South Carolina, which has a very good and fun to watch defensive line, and Lenora Sellers, a quarterback, has played pretty well in the second half of the season. And Clemson's offensive line is banged up, and I don't think Cade Klubnik's very good. So I think South Carolina's defensive line gets after him, and I think Lenora Sellers is a better quarterback than Cade Klubnik. So I'm picking South Carolina.
Yeah, I'm picking South Carolina too. I mean, the thing that I liked the best that you said there was what was the thing that I really liked? Oh, when you said that you didn't think Clemson's very good. That I thought was quite effective. This is one of these things. I will give you permission to think that like South Carolina is a pretty good football team, but that's not the same thing as saying that 3-loss South Carolina has a great playoff case, right? So just like we think Kansas is a good football team, we don't think Kansas should be in the playoff. So as long as are you saying that your South Carolina praise is in the Kansas-Minnesota context, right? They're good.
Yeah, I think they're good and they're dangerous, I think, on the right day.
Yeah.
Clearly,
okay.
As they've shown.
Acceptable. I will accept that. I have South Carolina 30-26.
I have 28-24 Gamecocks.
Second Cram It game also at noon on Saturday. Tennessee at Vanderbilt. Tennessee is an 11-point favorite, and they're going to lose. Vanderbilt 26-21 is my pick.
Love it.
This could be the first time since 1984 that Vanderbilt beats Tennessee and Alabama in the same season. They've played this 118 times. Tennessee leads 33-5. Tennessee has won 5 in a row. And Vanderbilt is having a great year. And all the pressure's on Tennessee here, and I think they're going to crumble.
When we did our playoff picks, what did I have? 2 SEC teams in my final playoff picks? Yeah. Part of the reason was because I thought Vanderbilt was going to beat Tennessee. And then I forgot that I said that. So I picked Tennessee here 24-20, but I'm not going to believe in myself. I think you're going to be right. I think Vanderbilt.
Okay. Yeah. I just think I really think this is very possible. This is not just like wishing for SEC chaos. I think this is very possible for Vanderbilt win. Last Cram It game, 7:30 on Saturday night. I'm going to watch this. I'm curious about it. I'll have it on my little iPad as I'm sitting in the press box at Iowa State, Kansas State. Texas at Texas A&M. Texas is favored by 5.5.
They played every year from 1915 until 2011 when A&M moved to the SEC. Texas leads 76-37-5 all time. And there were a few failed attempts in between 2011 and now to get this game back up and running that never came to fruition. But now they're both in the SEC, so they get to play each other. Texas won the last one, which was in College Station in 2011. Texas has won 9 of the last 12, but again, they haven't played in 14 years. I think that Georgia's defensive line worked Texas, and I think Texas A&M is going to do the same thing here. The winner of this game goes to play Georgia in the SEC title game, and I think that'll be A&M. I have A&M winning 27-21.
I think Texas is better than Texas A&M. I do think Texas is in a spot right where it comes up a lot, and it's valid. Like, okay, well, and who's Indiana played? Like, well, who's Texas played? They played like one good team, and they got boat raced by Georgia and benched their quarterback in the middle of it. And what else have they done? But I do think they're a pretty solid team, and they got to show it here. If they don't show this here, what is happening? If they don't show this here, like this whole Texas-Oklahoma move to the SEC is like an abject failure for both of those programs. They were a playoff team last year. Like, this is this is a show me game for Texas. Because listen, Texas A&M in first year of Mike Elko, they're still trying to build something. They're nuts. They lost to Auburn last week. You got to win this if you're Texas. If Texas does not win this, and then we fall into a 2-loss Texas with no good wins as a playoff team, I think they maybe could still make it, but not for sure. I would enjoy the chaotic conversation. I think Texas A&M is a fraud. But what a blow to the Texas program and Steve Sarkisian if they can't manage to win this.
Quinn Ewers is hurt. I think he might try to play. He's got an ankle injury. Been practicing.
Is he better than Arch Manning?
I would rather have Quinn. Although when Quinn came back from his injury earlier in the year, he did not play very well for a couple of games.
Yeah.
I think on the road in this kind of environment, I'd probably rather have the experienced quarterback, but you might see Arch. You might see Arch on Saturday night.
See Arch running 71 yards for a touchdown or something. Mm-hmm. All right, so those are all of our picks. We'll total them up. We have 3 shows to go through to make sure we have all the picks. We're glad you guys were here for all 3 of them. It's not normally how we do it. Next week we're going to be doing a lot of championship game preview stuff, but we'll also do a little bit of like resetting some other things. We have recruiting stuff to talk about. So this is the last week of the regular season, but like it is just getting rolling here on Kings of the North. We are going to be at playoff games. We are going to be at the national championship game. We're going to take you through the whole thing here. So we just are grateful that you guys are along for the ride. So let's get to the Dragon Statue. The Dragon Statue is our fantasy bet each week. It was 6-6 the first 12 weeks. Who won last week, Landis?
Your boy did. Narrowly. It was a bad week. It was our worst week since the first week. I won 23.4-20. I had Jalen Daniels. Jalen Daniels saved me. I had Nick Marsh, who didn't do much of anything. You had Max Brosmer, who played okay, and you had Colston Loveland, who only played a half against Northwestern. So I won 23.4-20.
He caught a touchdown to end the first half, and they didn't play. Look at that. I miss my guy. Oh, my gosh. Look at that beautiful statue.
Pretty great. Spent Thanksgiving in the Landis house.
Oh, my God. I'm so mad. So I might have to storm your house, by the way, with my swords and just take it back by force. We pick a Northern quarterback and a Northern skill player. So I got to win this week to tie it up. So then we're done. I don't think we won't go into championship game weekend. So if I win this weekend, we're tied. We're cutting the statue in half with a sword.
Okay. All right. I love it.
I think it's the only fair thing to do. I am very excited that I managed to do this. My 2 picks this week means that I will have used every of our Northern 28 teams except Purdue, Boston College, and West Virginia, because I'm checking off 2 teams I have not used yet by picking Avery Johnson, the Kansas State quarterback. I like watching guys that I picked in person, so I'm excited for this Iowa State-Kansas State game. He's really running the ball and throwing the ball well. He played great last week. And then I'll take Jeremiah Love, your guy that I know you have taken this season, who has scored a touchdown in every game. And so it's time for me to get on that ride. He has 16 touchdowns this season. I think he'll cash at least 1 against USC. So I'm excited to have Avery Johnson and Jeremiah Love this week.
I'm likewise excited because there was a week where you and I both picked Dylan Gabriel, and then we decided we weren't going to pick Dylan Gabriel. And then I have not since picked Dylan Gabriel, so I'm going to pick Dylan Gabriel against Washington in that rivalry game. And I also have not used Jeremiah Smith yet, so I'm going to use Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State against Michigan. I love the matchups here for both of them. not to be cocky, I'm feeling pretty good about my chances with Dylan Gabriel and Jeremiah Smith.
This doesn't seem fair. This doesn't seem fair. So 2 things here for Jeremiah Smith. One is he's not a Biletnikoff finalist, and it felt like last week he was still limited by his ankle that got twisted against Northwestern, and now he'll be another week healthier. So are you anticipating healthy and mad Jeremiah Smith?
I am. Yeah, I kind of felt like Ohio State wasn't resting Jeremiah Smith as he was playing because they did throw him the ball. They ran a sweep with him. I think if they felt like they needed it at any point, they would have started peppering him with targets, but the game got into Ohio State's favor, by halftime. So I think this is the week now that we see Jeremiah.
Yeah.
I made a prediction that Jeremiah was going to lock up the Biletnikoff award with this game. And then 12 hours later, it was announced that he was not a Biletnikoff finalist. So, but I still think he has that kind of game.
Yeah. I actually kind of got it. Why he's not a Biletnikoff finalist. I mean, the raw statistical argument, and stats matter in this stuff. He's 25th in the nation in receiving yards per game. So that's hard, right? I don't know.
It's stats driven. It's like Nick Nash at San Jose State, I think, is very deserving.
And Tetsuo McMillan was going to be one for sure.
But Arizona stinks too. That was part of it for me. I didn't vote. I'm a Biletnikoff voter. I didn't vote for him. I did vote for Jeremiah Smith. And I also didn't vote for Travis Hunter. He's awesome, but I don't know that he's the best receiver in college football. So I didn't vote for him either.
Yeah. I mean, they all have Nash is 2nd, McMillan is 3rd, and Hunter's 8th in receiving yards this year. Mm-hmm. And Jeremiah Smith is 25th. So just one of those things. He has other opportunities to win it down the road. Okay. Those are the Dragon Statue picks. We tried to leave some room for Whatcha here. So, Bill Landis, what are you watching?
I went and saw Gladiator 2 last week. You and I have talked about it a little bit. I thought it was fine. I didn't have any expectations that it would be as good as the first Gladiator movie, but I was also surprised, in my opinion, just how much it fell short of the first Gladiator movie. I did not think the fight scenes were very good. I don't know that there was enough of them. Mostly it's that I don't think Paul Mescal is a very good actor. This was the first thing I've seen him in, and I was pretty underwhelmed by his performance. I thought Denzel Washington was very good in it, although he was chewing scenery a lot. I thought Pedro Pascal was good in it, and some of the ancillary characters were very good, but the main guy, the Russell Crowe of this film, I did not think was particularly strong. So I was left a little unsatisfied by that.
Oh, Paul Mescal. He was in the Irish TV show. He was in Normal People.
Normal People.
Okay. Mm-hmm. My family has checked in and tells me they are watching, even though my wife isn't downstairs being mad about me being too loud. But they are watching from France. They like Paul Mescal. He's don't handsome. Really know who he is. You think he's not a great actor? So okay.
I don't know. I this is the only thing I've seen him in. Maybe the role just wasn't right for him. I think you got to have you have to have a presence to you to play
28
to be in a movie like this. And he did the thing where he went and got ripped and he looks good in the Gladiator gear, but just not very believable, I think, is the kind of character he was supposed to be playing.
This is really his big thing. This is quite a step up for him to do this. Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting. All right. So I went and saw a movie on Monday night, kind of to have something to talk about, but I did want to see this before it got wiped out of the theater. So I went and saw Red 1, which is the Santa Claus Gets Kidnapped movie with Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans. And there's a movie podcast that I like to listen to, and their headline on this movie is Red 1 the worst movie of the year? And I'm mad at them because I listened to their podcast and I thought they were being pretentious D-bags about this movie. So if you're a pretentious D-bag, don't go watch this movie. But I also think you have to think of it the right way. They were talking about it as it's a Christmas movie, but it doesn't feel super Christmassy, and it's kind of weird as a Christmas movie. And if you think of it as a Marvel movie, that the IP, instead of being comic books, is the most famous, at least in America, and I don't know if worldwide, mythology there is, Santa Claus. Because I don't know what the deal with Iron Man is, but everybody knows what the deal with Santa Claus is. So to make a Marvel movie that's it's Santa, he brings presents. He lives where it's snowy. There's like polar bears and penguins there. There are elves. And then they play off all of that stuff and make a Marvel movie. So there's a lot of stuff that I feel left out of the Marvel thing because I'm not a comic book person. And it's like, well, if I don't understand this guy, he built a robot that he flies around in the robot or what, but everybody knows who Santa Claus is. So I thought it was pretty good. But don't think of it as a Christmas movie. Think of it as a Marvel movie for everybody. And then it turns a lot of like the Christmas stuff kind of on its head, but I think in a fun way. And I like The Rock. I don't know. People think he's a meathead. People are like, oh, Jungle Cruise was stupid and Jumanji was stupid. It's like, I like both those movies. I think that's like my Rock zone. I like Rock and familiar IP. If Rock wants to do nothing but like Santa Claus and Disney movies the rest of his life and just be like a big lovable meatball in the middle of something that makes me feel warm and fuzzy, let's go. So yeah, all I would say is don't be scared off if you see headlines like Red 1 is the worst movie of the year. It's not. It's just if you're a pretentious ding dong, maybe you think it is.
Yeah, I like, is this movie about Santa Claus getting kidnapped the worst movie of the year? Like, what did you expect to go see Citizen Kane? Like, what were your expectations for the Santa Claus got kidnapped movie?
Because can I tell you about expectations here? You know what happens in this movie? Santa Claus gets kidnapped.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not a trick. So then what? I think it's so, yeah. Anyway.
J.K. Simmons plays Santa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Ohio State fan J.K. Simmons.
Bonnie Hunt's in this movie? Wow.
Yeah, she's Mrs. Claus.
Forever. I haven't seen her since Cheaper by the Dozen.
Yeah. There's all kinds of good stuff in this movie. Great. So I would recommend it. And the guy who was in Game of Thrones and now does the Scott's Lawn commercials, feed it.
Oh yeah,
he's in it. Yeah,
I don't know his actual. I don't know his actual name.
Yeah, yeah, but he's that guy.
He's this Torment Giants man.
Yeah, so go see it. I would recommend Red 1, but you have to have the right mindset. What are you eating?
We talking Thanksgiving? We talking Thanksgiving side? So I didn't make my favorite Thanksgiving side. I will make it. I just haven't had time to make it yet.
Yeah, you have 2 jobs.
I'm gonna make it later on tonight probably. It's pineapple stuffing. Have you had pineapple stuffing before?
Oh no, I'm. You gotta persuade me on the pineapple part of anything like savory here.
Yeah, well, we gotta like pineapple. I think it can be treated as like a dessert and like kind of a sweet bread thing if you wanted to, but I also think it works really well as a side, especially if you're doing ham. I know I'm okay if you do a ham on Thanksgiving, to be honest, because turkeys are hard to cook and sometimes they come out pretty dry. If you want to cook a ham, cook a ham. I'm not going to judge you for it. But pineapple stuffing is, if you use Hawaiian rolls, the King's Hawaiian rolls, it really takes it up a notch. You can use like regular bread too. I call it stuffing, but people call it dressing. It's the same thing. Yeah. But it's just like that, and it's basically whatever bread you want to use, crushed pineapple and butter, and you just kind of bake it like you would any kind of stuffing. And it is sweet, and it is it's got a little savoriness to it because of the butter. If you eat the whole thing, you might have a heart attack, but it's pretty tasty. My mom used to make it a lot when I was a kid, and I have tried my hand at it a time or two. We did like a Thanksgiving thing when I was in college, like before everyone left for break, and that's what I would make. I actually haven't made it in a couple of years, so I'm excited to make it this year. Ooh. But it's like an off the radar Thanksgiving side for me. I'll eat a traditional stuffing as well, and I like all the normal normal Thanksgiving fixings. Yeah. But pineapple stuffing for me is a real treat on Thanksgiving Day.
The fact that you went with a bread-based side, not a shock.
I mean, I am who I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Bread tastes good. You know what also tastes good? Just a King's Hawaiian roll with a little butter on it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like 9 of them, maybe.
At least. I'll eat a whole sleeve. I'll eat a whole sleeve of
Hawaiian roll. God. A whole, like the whole, if like you have just like 6 pieces of turkey left on your plate, and it's like, little Dougie, why are you full? And it's like, and also the second question is, where are the rolls? Like those conversations happened in my youth. All right, this is my side. So if you can see that is a smiling Amish gentleman on this package of dried sweet corn. Can you see that smiling Amish guy?
Yeah, I thought it was an Irish guy. It's an Amish guy?
No, he's Amish. He's Amish. This is very specific to central Pennsylvania. Where I grew up, like you can buy this in the store, but like outside of like 100-mile radius in the middle of Pennsylvania, you probably would have to order this online. You can order it online. John Cope's dried sweet corn. My wife calls this tortured corn because my wife comes from a corn place. She's from Iowa. And so the idea that you would take corn and then like dry it out. This is like, oh, if you're an astronaut, I'm going on a 2-year trip to Mars and we can't have corn. It's like, oh, well, we made corn. We dried it out and put it in a bag. But it's like, well, I have access to corn. Like it's right. I could walk to a cornfield from my house. Why am I doing this to corn? Because it's good. So you soak the corn in water. My mom used to soak it overnight, but you can just soak it for a couple hours. So you boil water, then you soak it. And then if you really want to make it like the style that when I was growing up, my mom made it, you put like milk and sugar in with this. And it's like you put sugar in with your corn. I don't do that. I don't do that version. So I just put in like a little salt, pepper, and butter. And then once it's soaked for a while, you cook it again. And it does kind of look tortured, but it's just like a savory kick to it, you know? Like when you dry something out, it's safe salt. It's so good. It's like my favorite food, but I only eat it twice a year. So I could make it every day if I wanted to, but I eat it at Thanksgiving. I eat it at Christmas. But it's like my number one thing. But like many Thanksgiving sides, and this is why I don't love Thanksgiving side bites, because everybody's favorite side is what their mom made when you were a kid.
100%.
And what your mom made is based on where you live and their cultural customs around it. So to come on and be like, your side sucks, my side's better. It's like, what is this? I mean, it's like religion. It's like, why are you your religion? It's like, well, for many people, that's what my parents were. And that's what the people in my community were. And so that's what I am. So we're going to have a fight about whose is better. It's just where you're from. Where I'm from, this is what we do. We do to corn. And my wife mocks me for it.
So you buy dried corn and then you rehydrate it?
You bring it back to life. Yeah.
Why don't you just not kill it in the first place?
Well, now you sound like my wife.
But I just don't. So what does it change? What does it change about the texture of the corn that makes that worthwhile?
It just like it's much less. It's much more savory. And it does look kind of weird, right? I mean, it's changes color. It's more brown than yellow. So it's not as fresh. Like it doesn't taste fresh. This is not like, oh, what a delicious fresh thing. It's like, no, this is a thing that feels like maybe you could have had it in your pantry for 9 years and then you opened the bag and made it. So
like you're putting a bag of this freeze-dried corn in your bomb shelter, right? Yeah. Next to your Twinkies.
Again,
yeah.
So it's like, but I don't live in a bomb shelter. So why do I need to eat it when I'm not in a bomb shelter or on a spaceship to Mars? It's like, I don't know, because my mom made it when I was a kid. So that's the answer to everything. So anyway.
I don't like corn. I don't eat corn.
So now my daughter's in here. My daughter's in here saying that she says, it's almost like how people from the South think the South is better. That now I'm trying to say, eat the Thanksgiving side that you want. And she's using it to defend SEC football honking. We're going to have a talk.
Maybe it's a good thing your family's not together for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Your side sucks is the whole basis of KOTN. This is my wife now. My whole family is in the chat explaining why me having grace around Thanksgiving sides is undercutting the entire theme of this show. But if I'm going to tell the South to cram it, I also should tell Thanksgiving sides to cram it. So Southern Thanksgiving sides can cram it. But if you're in the North and your mom made something when you were little, enjoy it for Thanksgiving. Is that okay? Can I define it in that manner? Yeah.
When you guys get together, when you guys have your normal Thanksgiving dinners, when you're all together, are you the only person who eats this?
Yeah, my mom makes it for me. Or my mom sends it to me so that I can have it. So that like, my wife makes like the whole dinner, and then like I make my little thing on the side, and I have to have it on the end of the table away from everybody else while they eat normal corn. Yeah. So, but it makes me happy. All right, what are you thinking about?
Nothing. My brain's fried. Happy Thanksgiving.
So, I'll do this quickly because we're on a show that you can listen to on a podcast. I went to the grocery store the other night and I kept my AirPods in and was listening to a podcast while I grocery shopped. Is that antisocial?
No, I do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where we are as a society about being in social situations and having your AirPods in. And I'm not listening to music. So I'm not like bopping along in the frozen food aisle. I'm just like listening to a football podcast and I want to maximize. I want to do multitask, right? So that's okay. We approve it. Does everybody do that?
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I also, it's good to have your ears available when you're doing some people watching, but I don't go to the grocery store to people watch. I'm just there. I'm there on a mission, and why not knock out a podcast while you're doing it?
Okay. Good. Then I feel better about it. I didn't know if I should be like participating in the world a little bit more, but I thought probably not. All right, that'll do it. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Go enjoy your sides. Go enjoy your family. Go enjoy your football. We will see you on the betting show Thursday morning. And then we will see you Saturday night with 3 live games that we will have seen in person and be able to talk about. And then really have a handle, I think, on, we'll know the conference championship games. We'll be just talking about some of these rivalry games that really mattered. I'm sure there will be a couple upsets. So I anticipate we had a great audience for the live show on this past Saturday. It was awesome to have that many people with us, and we hope that everybody's in the holiday spirit and will join us again on this Saturday. So for now, thanks to Mike Yersowski, our producer, for making us look good and sound good. Thanks to you guys for being here. Give us a thumb, tell a friend, subscribe to the show. For now, he is Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.